Order of Light presents a new era of contact, UFO sightings and strange anomalies, secret space programs and off-world adventures, advanced technologies and new discoveries, extraterrestrial abductions and contactees. Now is the time to speak. As we explore the unknown, the uncertain, and unseen, we are the disclosure, and these are those stories.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to We Are the Disclosure. Today, we have a very special guest. He is a researcher and writer when it comes to terraforming and ancient rock formations. Jock Doubleday, how are you doing, brother? Welcome to the channel. So glad to have you here. And everyone that's watching this right now, you are in for a treat tonight. How are you doing, brother?
Well, you and I just talked for about half an hour, so I'm doing really good because your energy is off the charts, man.
Yeah, and oh man, I wish I could leave everything in that we're talking about backstage, but I'll tell you what, Jacques is one of those individuals that has a really remarkable background. And unlike a lot of people that you hear in the disclosure community talking about this or that, this guy, such as myself, we've actually been around the world. We've actually been to these sites. We've actually studied these ancient terraforming and rock carvings and intelligently designed structures that most of you may see pictures and films about in movies and television series. But Jock and I, we've been to these locations. We've touched them. We felt them. We got to see how these great structures and megaliths around the world, known and unknown, has really transformed who we are. And Jock and I, we don't have all the answers. We just have the information to present to you. And the information we've collected through years of research is that there's something else going on that we're not being filled in on. And with that being said, Jock, so glad to have you here. And we would love to hear for all of those out there that don't know who Jock Doubleday is. Please fill us in a little bit of your background and how you got into all this. And we would just love to hear more of you.
Well, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. And I do feel a kinship with you through more than just your energy for discovering new things and for sharing the discovery of new things. Because ever since I was a kid, whenever I learned something, I'd be 92% into learning that thing, and I'd be so excited about it. I had to share it before I even learned the other 8%. You know, I'd tell everybody because it was just exciting to share information and check this out. Now, oftentimes, people weren't interested because they were on their own journey, and it's not the time was not right. But you know, with information like this, which is about the distant past, far a younger past than the pyramid builders, a past that's so far distant that it's kind of hard to conceive.
30,000 years, for example.
Or much older than that even. You're referring to the Bosnian Pyramids age, but even much younger than that, this kind of information is key to share, even if people are not quite ready for it. It needs to be put out there as an archive so that people, when they're ready for it, they can come to it and go, oh, so here's some evidence, not just somebody talking, but some evidence, photographic, videographic evidence of what was going on in the distant past. And I think that it's going to be super interesting for people.
Absolutely. And when you want someone to remember something forever, you turn it into a mountain, you turn it into a river and a stream, a water source that people have to communicate and travel on. It's the best way to ensure your integrity of your knowledge and the geometry of the universe. And it's exactly why we have the ancient structures that we have all around us, right?
Right. And the ancient structures, we could say that there's two main categories of peoples in the distant past, whether they are human or not. I'm not going to go into that, but the two categories of builders, okay, in the ancient past, I call the pyramid builders in general the ancients, okay, and that's pretty standard.
Beautiful.
And then I call the terraformers, the continent builders, the true ancients, just to distinguish them in time. So the continental terraforming theory is what we're going to be talking about mostly here in this particular interview, and then there'll be perhaps we'll have other interviews for Bosnian pyramids and things. But
definitely
good. The continental terraforming theory is really simply put in one sentence. It's just the theory says that in the distant past, an advanced race or races built the continents from below the ground up. So we have the ground, but they built it from below the ground up, and then all of the features that we see, the creek beds, the riverbeds, the valleys, the hills, and the mountains, are features of that built landscape. And most people talk about terraforming in the way that, say, Elon Musk talked about it in his recent tweets about going to Mars and terraforming Mars. It's essentially a climate alteration idea, and he wants
nuking it to allow it to create new life.
Nuking the poles to create liquid water from the frozen water. Yeah, it's wild.
Dude, yeah, I just want to say this. Elon Musk, I know for a fact that guy is a hybrid. He's no different than any of us. Dude, that guy is onto it, and he knows exactly what is up, and you're right. And that's, for example, in ancient India, we find this glass that is only created from nuclear atomic fallout, and glass all over. And it's found all around. And when you study the ancient Vedic texts and you study these ancient mythologies, absolutely amazing the correlations that can be found within these ancient sites and structures, and the terraforming, the intelligence of creating a planet. Planets are indeed created. Am I right?
That's the punchline. I mean, and then we could also have an interview where we talk about building of the Earth, because I have a lot of information. Those are two subjects for which there is a lot of evidence, but the controllers, I won't name them, are suppressing that evidence like they suppress everything else that could bring us forward, to bring us out of the matrix. They created the thought control matrix that we're in right now, and little by little we're climbing out of it, and we're helping each other. That's the key. You're helping me. Hopefully I'm going to help you.
You're helping me. You are helping me. So
well, when we find something out, we tell our friends, and then they are one slight rung up, coming out of the muck and mire of this bullshit we're in, and have been in since day one. I think as a species, I think we've been farm animals since day one, and they brought us in, and the thought control matrix was already there. So we've never known our true power, never known our true potential, never known our true beauty, never known who we are ever.
Unfortunately, it's truly sad that that's the way it is. But for all of you that are watching right now, I know you completely resonate with what is being said, because that is exactly what is going on. We have been lied to for the sake of a false sense of national security. Quotes, big booty quotes. We have been lied to for the false sense of national security that we are not in the need to know what we are living on. In a world where everyone is so worried, oh, I'm Palladian, I'm Sirian, I'm Orion, I'm Andromedan, all these different star galaxies and star constellations, they don't realize how special this planet is. And that there are structures, living organisms, higher dimensional beings, and so many ancient great spirits that my native ancestors talked about that have been on this planet since its creation, which is beyond what we can comprehend of time. It's beyond. No point of talking about it, right?
Brother, you want to know a secret?
Yes, please. Love them.
If you look up Earth, the word Earth, you find out that the etymology of Earth is soil. It's not a planet. The use of the word Earth to talk about this planet only came into existence circa 1400 Common Era. So what we have is a populace of 7.8 billion people.
Oh, we're up to 8 billion now.
Are we?
Currently.
Well,
Currently.
they didn't do a good enough job with the medical intervention. So they didn't kill enough of us to bring it back down to 7.8. Okay. So we're at 8 billion. And all of us believe that our planet's name is Earth. And that is incorrect. Our planet's name is Terra.
Terra. We said it at the exact time.
I'm glad you're
Terra.
So you knew that. How did
That's
you know
what
that?
everything else in the universe calls this planet. So could you please explain, what does that mean? What does Terra mean? Who knows?
Well, we have the etymology. We've got the correlation between many words that show us that it's Terra, plus Akashic record readers say exactly what you said, which is the vast majority of off-worlders and inner earthers and extra dimensionals call this planet Terra. There are some races that have other names for our planet, but it's in the extreme minority. So virtually everybody calls this planet Terra, except
For example,
that's probably a reasonable name, especially right now with all the chaos going on. That sounds like a chaotic planet, you know. But
exactly.
But Terra, terrain, terrestrial, extraterrestrial. It's not extra earth-estrial. It's extraterrestrial. So all these names tell us that this is our planet's name, but we're like, yeah, it's planet Earth, yay. So we don't even know the name of our own planet. Is what is the point of that? So if we don't even know the name of our own planet, what else don't we know?
How could we possibly understand how this planet was formed when we don't even understand what the rest of the universe calls it and why it's called that?
Yeah,
exactly.
So so the thought control matrix comes in strongly at every point. Whenever you're talking about anything, the thought control matrix has already altered or created a language that will be an obstruction to our understanding of what the subject is. So it's like to climb out of the matrix that was created for us thousands of years ago, when we were first created. It's really hard. So with a smile, we're just going to try to do our best to talk about built continents, which sounds crazy because we're in the thought control matrix. We're deep in it.
Yeah. And it's not crazy. Like, there's a lot of species out there that people, especially my followers, they're familiar with. Let's talk about the ancient Lani from the Lyra star constellation, which we here on Earth, we call the man system. Why do you think we call it the man system? Is it, why do we call us humans? Why do we call Terra and terraforming Terra, Earth forming, intelligently designed? Even for all the religious folk out there, you have it in your books. There was multiple beings that were involved, plural. God was never referred to as a singular. If you read Genesis, the early book, which is actually a Sumerian Anunnaki book that was re-spoken in later times and written down by a few people that had no idea what was actually going on. Let's call it for what it is. When they were saying the gods, and you can pick up King James Version, New Living Translation, any version you find, you will find that the gods are plural. The gods, they made us. They will say, quote unquote, They made us in their, plural,
Yep.
own image.
Right. And
All plural.
Hebrew scholar Moro Bilino, Biglino, he's a scholar of Masoretic Hebrew. So he was asked by the Vatican, he worked for the Vatican publishing house for 10 years, the official publishing house of the Vatican. And after 10 years, they said, hey, make a word for word translation of this Bible, this Hebrew Bible. And he said, okay. So he started to do it. And what he found was Elohim, it is not only a plural form, but irrespective of whether it's a plural form or not, it means many people, period. It does not mean God. It does not mean one deity, one person. It means many people. So because people say, oh, it's a plural form, that meant the Trinity. No, it means many people. And the plural form also gives us a clue. So he has this series called The Unexpected Bible, so you guys can find that. He's amazing. He just goes on and on. He's a smart dude. He got fired for finding spaceships and ETs in the Bible.
What you can't talk about, Ezekiel. Same reason I was kicked out of my church and called a demon, because I had an encounter with an extraterrestrial after being an ordained pastor, reading, believing in the stories in this book. You know, that's the way they take it, unfortunately. And
Right.
as you're saying with the Elohim and what's going on, it's the creation of many, not just some. It's overwhelming,
Yeah.
self-sustaining amount of different beings and
Right.
entities that have had some sort of shape or influence or interaction with this planet through the decades.
Right.
And each new species at a later time, for example, the ancients, as you called them, which is appropriate, they created this just because they could. The same reason we create anything. They could create a planet. Oh, look at this little blue dot we put in the universe, right? And then you had other beings come along thousands of years later, and they're like, oh, this little thing that was created, we can go on there and put our bacteria on there.
Yeah.
And then millions of years later, 22 different species said, oh, look, we can create a new kind of livestock, a new sort of genetic time capsule to and store on this planet. And not only that, we can use them to harvest minerals and monatomic gold and other elements for us, so we don't have to do the work anymore.
Right.
Arubas.
Right. So
you got going around cleaning up.
I got so many things to say about what you just said, but the last thing you said about harvesting the monatomic gold, I think what happened is, see, for the Terra or for the Who Built the Earth book, I had to solve the problem of gold, because if the Earth was built, why did they put gold into it for somebody to later come and harvest? If gold is so valuable, no one would stick gold under the planet's surface for someone to later go, hey, let's go make a genetic hybrid with a natural hominid, make him a slave, have him dig this stuff out. It doesn't make any sense. So I had to figure it out. And my research leads me to this. Gold, well, Tesla said all crystals, that crystalline material is a life form. It grows.
It's alive.
It's alive. It's living. Gold is leafing through the earth. That's why it's in a vein. It's not just in a vein for no reason. It's growing through the earth on a matrix. It's always with a matrix. So it's growing in a certain, just like a plant needs soil, the gold needs a matrix. And so all these beautiful minerals we see, they're always done in some kind of quartz matrix or some other matrix. So the gold is leafing through the earth, is growing, and people go, oh, it's been 100 million years. Let's go find some gold on that planet that we call Terra, that the slaves call Earth. And so they come and, they get the slaves to mine the gold, the living gold, that then turn into the monoatomic form, because
molecule, water form.
That's the magic, because it's a superconductor. You can do anything with this stuff. You can live thousands of years. You can
save a planet from radiation.
You can levitate
in the atmosphere.
It's a magic form of gold. And David Hudson has done so much work on this. And he's not even on Wikipedia. he's like the main dude that he should be first on Wikipedia. Like it should say he should be featured on Wikipedia. He's not even there. And by the way, monoatomic minerals are not even featured on Wikipedia. And you're like, what the hell?
And they can prolong our life. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah, they're magic. So that's why Wikipedia censors them. So that's a Rothschild control system. And the Rothschilds work for the Draco. And anyway, so your audience knows all this probably. So I'm assuming. So let's talk about the word tectonic really quick, because just yesterday you research it and you go, wait, something's not right here with this tectonic plate theory. So because they say that mountains are created like this this mountain here was created by tectonic movement, the plates crashing into each other. And you're like, but if plates crashed into each other, even if one subducts, you're going to have rubble. You're not going to have integral structures because the force is too great with these massive plates. So then you go, that's a window into maybe it's not right. And then you research it further and you go, oh, this is total nonsense. So then I was just looking at it. I said, you know what? I know that the tectonic plate theory has been dismantled by actual science, but what does tectonic mean? Because I don't know what tectonic means. I know the phrase tectonic movement. I know what movement means, but I don't know what tectonic means. So I researched it yesterday just for fun. It wasn't to do with this particular interview necessarily. I'm just curious. And I find out that tectonic before 1887 meant fabrication, building. It's an art that there's a process of building. Weaving is another word for the etymology of
weaving. Beautiful.
You know, and then you go, wait, what happened in 1887? Well, they just changed the word. They just changed the meaning of the word. And they said, from now on, somebody said this, from now on, tectonic is going to mean of or pertaining to the structure of the earth. So they took away the builder, the builders, the craftsmen, the craftswomen, the weavers, the fabricators, and they just said, it's talking about the structure of the earth. And it's like, say what now?
Saying what?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's nonsense.
So that was just yesterday. That was just yesterday that I found that. I'm like, I got to start the show with this, you know? I mean, it's been 25 minutes we were in, but I wanted to start the show with this word tectonic, you know, and go, it totally
goes
changed.
Back to the tectonic, Terra. You see a constant trend of te, amote, I could keep going.
Yep.
It's older, and these sounds that come out of our mouths are nothing more but frequency and vibration, which is the exact technology and tool to do all of this amazing stuff. Long story short.
Technology, tech.
Is that a coincidence? Technology, Terra, terraforming.
And tectonics, the root of tectonics, the Proto-Indo-European language root, which is, you got a hyphen after it, just a root, is TEKS. So tectonics, TEKS, is related to technology.
You can't make this stuff up. Can't make it up.
It just gets crazier, you know?
And this is why we got to talk about it, because we don't even realize these connections until we understand. I was an English teacher in the Middle East, and my students would always ask, why do you say this prefix? Why? What does this mean? And it forced me to actually look into what we say, what we, our frequency, our tone that comes out of our mouth.
Right.
And just like these ancient stone structures are found around the world, they were intelligently designed, just like this entire planet. Insane. Mind-blowing.
Right. We gotta distinguish, since you mentioned intelligent design.
What is that intelligent design?
Well, we gotta just make sure people understand up front that we're not talking about the intelligent design of the
guy sitting up in a chair up in the clouds.
Right, the patriarchal God. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about Earth is a few thousand years old and the God of the Bible created it. Now that's one theory. I'm not going to say anything about that. All I'm going to say is that the Bible has been mistranslated, and so if we really look at that, we're going to find gods, like we've said, and not God, and that means people, and that means ETs in our language today. So anyway, so we're not talking about intelligent design by the patriarchal God on the cloud, as you say. What we're talking about is a many stage project, and reader of the Akashic records helped me with this, with that data point, because I said, are there people throughout history that are adding to the terraforming, changing it, doing their own bit? And she said yes, and she named the actual races. So that'll help me, because I have a book coming out called Who Terraformed the Earth, and I didn't know until she told me. But of course, many people are not going to take that as strong evidence, and that's okay. It'll just be icing on the cake of the actual hard evidence, which is the stuff right in front of our eyes that we can't see because of something I call geological hallucination. And it's just a term I picked out of nowhere. That has hard bedrock. There's a reason I'm saying that, and I can tell you that right now if you're up for it.
Yes, and I would love to hear more about that, because some of the sites I've seen, the public and the world chooses to absolutely ignore and to hallucinate. Well, you're only seeing what you want to see, versus having an understanding of masonry, which you come from a background of. You know, you've worked with rocks, you've worked with concrete, you've worked with designing these things, and you're coming across these structures, and they're just saying, well, you're only seeing what you want to see because you're hallucinating. But I'm sorry, a 45-degree angle is a 45-degree angle, and flat ceilings and single stone structures that are 15-ton expanding and winding, we're not able to do that today. So please tell me why why we are hallucinating with these ancient stone structures.
Okay, so you were, just for people to give some background on what Robert was just saying, he was specifically talking about KTK tunnel in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, and I made a video on it, and Robert just watched it. So he's like, wait, this is supposed to have been dug when it's clearly built for many different reasons. Just go find that video. And I'm going to skip to another thing you said, which was Masonic or masonry. You didn't say Masonic, you said masonry. I want to make sure that people know that he's talking about a recent 25-year-old background in my own individual life of having built stone retaining walls, freestanding. In other words, not using mortar, but using the weight of the stone to make it strong. So I apprenticed with Bo Littig in California. He's a Scottish stoneworker, and so I built stone retaining walls with him many times, and he showed me how to do it. It's a specific technique that's pretty simple, but if you don't know that technique, your wall is not going to stand. You have to incline the stones into the face of the hill that you're trying to. So the hill, let's say the hill's here, and so you bring and you weight everything down, so everything is inclined. The stones are literally laying like this, and so the weight of the stones is against the weight of the hill, so they oppose each other and they both stand together. So that's one. There's about 4 simple things you can do to make a beautiful, long-lasting stone wall, and that's what Robert and I were talking about just before this interview, which was that what the ancients and the true ancients did. So the true ancients being, in my terminology, the continent builders, and the ancients being the pyramid builders in general. What they did was they built to last. That's what they wanted. That was their primary criterion. And I spent 23 months in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, and I would always come to this as I was walking around the complex going, man, they really built this to last, and they really didn't want to have to do this again, was my speculation, you know?
Yeah. And you're right. When these ancient structures, the amount of knowledge and technology and wisdom that can be found within them, these structures were built to last. There's no modern day structure that will last as long as the ones that the ancient builders have created. We'll
Right.
never be able to do it again because we lack the knowledge and information on it. We've lost it. It's always been there, but we're just now rediscovering it, and we still don't understand the complexity of this issue, that there are beings out there that are capable of making many different things. And sometimes they occur naturally. They do, right?
Well, the viewer, the listener might want to see some photos, and I think we'll try to get to those in a few minutes. But first, I want to talk about geological hallucination. We have photos of 3 lines of evidence that creek beds and riverbeds, and therefore hills, because creek beds and riverbeds are the foundations of hills, were built in the distant past. So the 3 lines of evidence are straight line seams that go through many different layers of sedimentary material. Okay, and you're like, but isn't one layer of sedimentary material meant to be a time period? Isn't that what geology says? And the answer is yes. So how are different time periods having the same line go straight through them? Sometimes 10 or 20 layers have one vertical line that goes through them. And you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, geology covers that up. They say, well, we're going to call those straight vertical lines something other than terraforming, building. We're going to call them joint fractures. And you're like, wait, what? Joint fractures. It's a hyphen in between, and it's a term they use as a gaslighting term, because there's no such thing as a joint that's also a fracture, and there's no such fracture that's also a joint. It's one of the
jointed fracture would break, and it wouldn't exist, right?
If it's a fracture, it's going to be breaking. But what you see is an integral, the integral nature of these sections that the ancients used. So they built left to right, right to left, horizontally across the earth. One section, one section, one section. So when you see these lines, and then if one breaks out at the section seam, you'll see the smooth interior face. And I've got photos for all this. So I'm telling you the categories of evidence we're going to see photos for. And so you've got the straight vertical lines that are, I call seams, to oppose the joint fracture gaslighting bullshit that the academia wants to foist on us. It's total nonsense. Joint fracture. If you asked a carpenter to create a joint fracture, he'd go, wait,
what?
You need a joint, right? There's many types of joints to hold something together strongly. A fracture is the weakening of the material, and a joint is the strengthening of the structure, the ultimate structure. And that's what you see. You see this really integral. Sometimes you can barely see the seams, like a seam in a garment. You can barely see it. It's so strong, and it's holding these sections together. And then the next layer, it's holding the sections together. All right, so that's one category, is the straight line seams in the material that we see when we walk out into a creek bed or a riverbed, because we can see the structure, the bank, and we can see the structure of the hill that it's the foundation for. Then the next category is 45 degree. This is Robert's favorite, 45 degree section along the riverbed. So as you walk down the riverbed, whichever way it turns, you've got the 45 cross hatching in the primary layer, which is the bedrock layer, or in the next layer up, which is what we call a base layer. And then you've got an alternation between right angle lines. So when you look at the bank, you're looking at sections of material, and it's like right angle. If you continue the line across the riverbed or creek bed, 70 degree lines and 45 degree lines. So you never know what they're going to do, but they're always changing it up, and they're always changing their section sizes and section shapes, which we learned from the Bosnian, or from the Egyptian, the big pyramids on the Giza Plateau. There's this guy that made a drone video of the top of the Great Pyramid. The capstone's gone, of course. All the capstones are gone. So you can see the interior building, and you can see that the stones are not the same sizes, and they're not the same shapes. They're not the same heights. They're all different. And you're like, how did they do that? I mean, you'd think that how much different can you make a basically square, a basically rectangle stone? Well, they did it because they know that that's good earthquake mitigation. They knew you had to have different shapes, different sizes. That's why the geologists were fooled for centuries, because they didn't see the regularity that we're used to. And you mentioned that. You mentioned our building. Our building is make a mold, make a brick, and put them all together. Well, that's just nonsense. The ancients and the true ancients would just go, "You're not doing it right."
Yeah. That's it. And we got to rediscover more. And there's a reason, as you're mentioning, that they would go through and put these layers and some of the angle to understand that things need to be this exact angle in order to have the strongest sort of,
That's it.
you know, compatibility. It shows intelligence. And it's
Yeah,
no coincidence that we are finding so many megalithic structures around the world, some that are covered in trees and dirt and minerals and may just look like a mountain. But long and behold, it's not a mountain. And there is so much out there. And without holding up any more, I would love to go through these videos and
the
see
picture,
the pictures,
right?
yes, of some of these sites and some of the information through your research and your writing that you've put together about structures that a lot of people may be familiar with or not.
Yeah,
And what's the difference of something, lava spewing out of a volcano and just making land versus intelligently designed slopes, surfaces, rock layer beddings, etc.?
right. Okay, good. So to get to the third category, by the way, of the photos, I'll just mention it briefly, which is alternating hard structural layers and soft earthquake mitigating layers. And we'll see in the photos, Bosnian pyramids is the prime example of this because they're soft earthquake mitigating layers. Sometimes they're a centimeter at, let's say, on the bank of a river that's actually the foundation of pyramids. On the bank, you'll start to see these really thin, soft earthquake mitigating layers. They didn't want to put them in the middle, in the deep part of the water because the water action would take out these soft earthquake mitigating layers. So they just did baked adhered layers up to a certain point, and then at that certain point, they a few yards up, a few meters up, they started to put really thin layers that could be protected by the hard structural layers enough that the water wouldn't just whip them out. Because once you take out the earthquake mitigating layers, then the hard structural layers fall and your riverbed is destroyed, and that's your foundation for your pyramids and hills. So they did really thin, really thin. But then as you get up further, pretty soon, within a few feet, you've got massive, like a meter, 2 meters of soft earthquake mitigating clay as the way to make sure that earthquakes don't destroy the riverbed. And when I first saw that, when I first went into the river in Bosnia, and that's the genesis of the theory, I was like, oh my gosh, they built it, And it was my time. It was 17 months into the 23 months that I spent there. I started to think about the riverbed, found out it was built in exactly the same way that the structures above it were built. It's one structure. It's you got the Pyramid of the Sun over here, and you got Fornica Hill on the other side and Bosnian Pyramid Moon on this side, and they're joined together through the riverbed. So the ancients who built that beautiful natural looking pyramid complex is natural to us because it's not built in the same way as the Giza Plateau pyramids, or the Mexican pyramids. It's made of clay, and stones that aren't similar sizes at all. So the ancients who built that knew that they were going to have water coming through, and sometimes it's going to flood. So they didn't want to just set their pyramids on the earth and have the river flood and take out the bottom layer below the pyramid, and the pyramid falls. They wanted the water to run over the mega structure that is the complex. It's all one structure. The entire complex is one structure. The water has to run over the top of it. It's like if water ran over the top of your house instead of, the top of a low-lying area in your house. You built a low-lying area so that your house wouldn't get undercut by water. That's what they did. It's crazy good.
You're right. A lot of these pyramid structures, whether there's a river there today or not, at some point or another, they were built along waterways.
Right.
Also, these pyramid structures were to harness energy, and no better natural conductor of energy than a water source that
Right.
is grounding these ancient megaliths, which, as you mentioned, a lot of the capstones have been taken. That's
Yep.
to depower it, to turn it off, to shut it down. But as you were mentioning with the Bosnia ones, and I've seen the footage of you in these tunnelways, and there would be what would look like as giant clay bricks. They look like bricks. And then
Mhm.
you would find a very thin settlement layer of clay. And not just that, but all different pieces, like almost, to break it up, almost like a sponge ball,
Mm.
to use a bunch of different little pieces to allow some compression,
Mhm.
since earthquakes and other anomalies can happen naturally within this geology of these structures. And when you study how much it took them for them to create this, they didn't just put square blocks together.
Right.
They did so many different layers in order for it to stand to a point to actually become a mountain. Most people call these sites and the Bosnian Pyramid, they'll call it a mountain because it's that firm and strong.
Right.
And
Well,
it's actually this buildup of many different layers intelligently stacked in a way that creates it as strong as a mountain.
yeah, the Bosnians think of that structure, the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, as Semir Osmanagic named it when he discovered the pyramid in April 2005. They've been living on the side of that pyramid their whole lives, their families. They built on it. They dug down to make their foundation, and they found these weird stones with texturing on the top, flat on the bottom, and they go, made of clay. And they're like, well, that's weird. And then they just carved them off because they were all different sizes. So therefore they couldn't be construction stones because they're all different sizes. And no stone in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex is the same as any other stone so far. They're all unique. So there's no mold. They built each stone by hundreds of millions or maybe billions of stones for this massive complex. They built each clay stone, hard baked clay stone, in a unique way. It's astounding. So the people making their foundations would go, well, cart those off because they're just stones. They're just natural stones. And so they think of this pyramid as a natural hill. And until Semir came, after 10 years of going around the world and finding pyramids and writing books about pyramids, he came back to his own country of Bosnia, was invited to go to Visoka, which he'd never been to, which is in the heart of the complex. And he said, oh, that's a pyramid. He saw the north face, which had the Pyramid of the Sun has the most accurate northern facing side of any to cosmic north of any pyramid on the planet. It's 12 times more accurate than the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau. And it's much bigger. You could probably fit 7 or 8 Great Pyramids in the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. It's massive. So then across the Foinica River, which is also built, it's all one structure, you have the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon. And that's the second largest pyramid on the planet. So Semir is discovering these amazing things that he's carbon dated at 34,000 years, plus or minus a couple hundred years. And so that was the genesis of the theory, as I said. So let's look at some photos. We've got the 3 categories of evidence: the straight line seams, the 45-degree angle construction in riverbeds and creek beds on 3 continents that I've explored. So we've got photos from 3 continents of the 45-degree angle. Then we've got the soft earthquake mitigating layer alternating with the hard baked claystone layer. So let's see if we can get some photos.
Yes. So now we are going to go through some amazing photographs and information, and Jacques is going to go over. So it's one thing for us to talk about these things, but we want to show all of you that there's a lot more going on to these ancient megaliths and geology sites and what we view as Terra, this terraforming, this all the TEs that there are out there. And we're going to go through these pictures, and Jacques is going to give a little bit of information for each one. So let's get it going. Here we go. There we are.
All right, so this is Wadi Rum in Jordan, and we're going to get to Petra too, which is even more clear than this. And I'm just doing a little comedy because I'm a playwright and a screenwriter. So I just had a conversation between a student and a professor, and the student is saying in class, he's saying, those vertical straight line seams that transverse sedimentary layers in Wadi Rum, Petra, and he's going to say some other sites. And the professor says, shut up, sit down, and take the test. Because geology does not want you to look at the straight line seams. They want you to call those joint fractures. And you can see so many straight line seams all those layers in that structure are supposed to be different time periods, and yet you have massively long, tall, straight line seams through many, many, many different layers. How's nature doing that? Well, nature's not doing that.
Exactly, and there's more going on with all of that. It does naturally happen. Another great example, right? Right here, Petra.
Yep, that's the same dealio. Well, how is that shaded, really strongly shaded line on the right, that vertical line? How is that going through so many layers of what they call sedimentary sandstone when every single layer is supposed to be a different time period?
Yeah, and vertically. That's the point. Yeah, you have your horizontal stones, but look at your vertical lines. You know, you're creating a grid essentially, and it just doesn't make sense. If water naturally flowed through this site, it would just fade it away. You would have a smooth surface. Yeah, would you have layers of sediment? Yeah. But how do you explain the strikes down vertically and the thicker layers at the bottom filled with small structures in the middle, and then your cookie crumble on the top? It just doesn't make sense, right?
Well, and geology, just to say this again, because it's so key, geology had to name the vertical lines that we see all across the planet. So they said they're joint fractures. Now,
or water runoff is, what they dismiss that as.
Now, the word fracture tells us that this should be breaking apart, but I call these seams because it's clearly not breaking apart. It's integral. It's being held together. Somehow the ancients, or the true ancients in this case, who built the continents, figured out a way to build a cake so that on the right you have this layer cake, this thin layer cake that goes up, all these different layers, and then they build the next section on the left, the middle sort of larger section, the larger width section, and that's a layer cake. And then they went to and then they somehow joined them after having built them next to each other. They joined them at the seams, at the section faces. And you're like, how would they have done that? Because we don't necessarily have we probably have the technology, but not the know-how to do that. I think it was probably sonic technology where they reheated the sections that they had put up next to each other, and then they melted a bit into each other. I have no idea, but that's just a theory.
No, dude. I gotta call this out.
Okay.
Think of how we make fabrics and micro materials. I grew up very close to a DuPont plant where they are creating polycarbons and things of this nature, parachutes. And think of how we make the strongest materials. It's by an interwoven layering of materials. Look at our t-shirts, how you can take a bunch of thin, soft cotton that you could blow away, and you can turn cotton into something so soft and smooth all over us. It's the same woven structures that we find in these natural anomalies, or unnatural, intelligently designed, however we look at it. It's amazing that these poly mixes and how we create fabrics and very strong materials, including Kevlar, bulletproof vests. Think about the layering structure that makes a bullet be able to stop, and how, if you apply these technologies and physics to mountains like you have right behind you, to structures and pyramids around the world, how it would make it indestructible. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, geologists, if you go into geology as a student, and you get to listen to the geology teacher talk, then he or she will say that everything that you see on the earth just happened. They always say it formed. So somehow all these things are forming, and then the student goes, oh, okay, it just formed. So somehow nature is so amazing, that it formed vertical lines through 40 or 30 different time periods in quotes. And so somehow nature did that. It must be a crack. Well, why isn't it? They don't get to ask the right questions. So in other words, the thought control matrix comes down hard in the earth sciences. So
Yeah.
the students have no chance. They're just like, if you want an A, you have to call them a joint fracture. You cannot call them a seam that's like a seam in a garment. And always in my videos, I say it's like a seam in a garment. And now you're talking about
it is.
You know?
It is. It absolutely is.
So let's keep going to show people what.
Yeah. Let's get it going. Tell
Let's
us
get it
about
going.
this. What the heck, man? Look at this. You gotta be kidding me.
So geology would say, oh, that's just a joint fracture. That's the only way they can explain that. And it's not an explanation, since joint fracture doesn't mean anything. It's just some words put next to each other with a hyphen in between, you know?
Yeah, this is deliberate.
So if Petra was built, then we know what the distinction is between ancients and true ancients, because if this sandstone, quotes, if this concrete material that we call sandstone comprises different sections of a massive landscape of, quote, sandstone, then the features of Petra that tourists are attracted to, well, they just walk past that vertical line. They don't care about the continents being built. What they want to see is the carvings in the continental material.
Not the layers itself.
Right. They want to see some other race. They think of it as people. Who knows? Humans. I don't know. That came later, the ancients. So the continental builders were the true ancients. Then the Petra, what we call Petra, engineers, carvers, they carved or laser cut or whatever they did. They created that artistic facade. And people call it a city. It's like, it's not a city. It's like a Western town facade movie set. It's not. No one would live there. It's just a facade. All of these things are facades. I mean, there's some caves. Exactly. You know? So let's carve this massive thing and then leave no trace and no message about why we did it. But millions of tourists are going there. Let's see some more straight line seams in what geology calls sedimentary sandstone. How do you explain these vertical? They're not perfectly right angle, but
look at those lines. Look at them.
Would you call those fractures or seams?
Seams, bro, to hold it all together, not fractures. The scientific community don't have any idea what they're talking about. Those are seams, bro.
And so we get confused as tourists because we see the door and we're like, hey, let's stand next to the door. We'll get a photo op. What a cool door. Someone made a door in this, and no one's looking at the material because it's like, oh, there's a whole bunch.
Look at the seams.
Yeah. So the tourists miss what to me is the most amazing part of it. I mean, I guess they're both amazing, but someone built the continents. That sounds crazy, but clearly this is section material. How far does the sectioning go? Does it go miles?
Just like the tectonic plates, Terra plates.
Right. The tech, the Proto-Indo-European language root, TEKS hyphen, technology, all these words that come from this, tectonic plates, and the changing of the meaning of the word tectonic to, oh, it's just referring to the structure of the earth. There's no builder. Well, there was a builder before 1887, and they changed the meaning of tectonic. There were craftsmen building things that we call geological.
Technology, Terra, terraforming.
Terrain.
Like, look at this. Look at this crack. Where is this and what's going on? Look at this crack. Whoa, that's a good crack here.
Well, that's what the not only geologists, but what the climbers call cracks, and they love cracks because they're what they call cracks. They're not cracks, they're seams. This is an open seam, I'd call this, because the sections have come apart slightly, but you can see into the interior of the structure. You can see the smooth-faced interior, and you're like, wait, sedimentary sandstone is creating a vertically smooth face?
Impossible.
That's
naturally.
Yeah.
Naturally impossible.
How could nature create a vertically smooth face? And yet that's what we always...
It can't.
We always find that. Every continent I've explored 3 continents personally, you always find the smooth-faced interior sections. It's not just that there's a straight vertical line. It's that if a piece breaks out, you go, oh, it's a smooth, regular face. How is that? When sometimes the material is really chaotic on top, but then suddenly it's perfectly smooth and regular on the side. And you're like, wait,
Oh man.
that's a section for building something, you know?
Look at, dude, I'm sorry, that picture is insane.
It's insane.
Like a crack that big is absolutely intelligent.
That tall, a crack that tall, and we call it, let's call it an open seam that tall. And look on the left, you got another seam that's not open. On the right, you've got a slightly open seam, and it's all it is vertical. You know that movie with Tom Cruise. I don't know
Mission Impossible
series it was, but he's doing that opening scene where he's free climbing or whatever, or climbing. I think, does he ever? No, he's free climbing. And so if you take screenshots from that, you see all these vertical lines running through, and you're like, wait, what?
Ooh, there. That's amazing. So here's another one. I'm popping in the edge of the video here. I'm scooting over to be up in.
So this is Horseshoe Canyon in Utah, and I went there personally before I knew anything about the Earth. I was just hiking there with my girlfriend, and saw these beautiful, what they call Great Gallery.
Great spirits, brother. Great spirits.
Pictographs, you know, and they're just so beautiful. And that's what I looked at. I didn't look at the straight line seams that ran through this sedimentary material. Well, it's not sedimentary material. If you see these seams, you know it's concrete. It wasn't laid down over thousands of years, millions of years. It was
placed there. It was intelligently placed.
Right. So that's concrete. That's I call them magic recipes, because across the earth, the true ancients cooked up magic recipes of minerals. And I have an explanation for where they got that. If we have time at the end of this video, we can talk about where they got the material to build continents and planets. But they cooked up magic recipes for different locations around the earth. And you're like, well, if Tesla said crystals are life forms, what were the true ancients thinking? They're like, well, let's put this living mineral mix, this recipe, this magic recipe right here.
Alchemy.
And when we go, a planetary alchemy, that's a great word. And they're building this mosaic of different mineral structures across the earth. And they're so big to us that we don't really notice the mosaic. We just go, oh, for some reason, nature just burped up some different recipe here, and they burped up some different, and there was tectonic uplift and all this stuff. And you're like, well, that's one way to look at it, because, you know, we don't have, we're in a state of hypnosis from academia telling us over and over and over again that we're the first advanced race. And if we're the first advanced race in the universe, there's no life on any other planet. Then, since we didn't build the continents must have come into existence through natural forces. So that's they're setting us up.
And hey, I just want to call this out. I know I'm going through. I got the background, see, but my ancient ancestors. All right, there's a reason we carved these pictographs on the sections of terraforming that we chose to carve these pictures on. It's because we said, holy shit, look, the creator, our creator God, we call it creator. That's what I worship. Source energy, creator God, great spirits. I'm native all the way. We saw these ancient divides, these great splits, and these amazing, and you've noticed the great splits, hence why my ancestors chose to carve these great spirits on. That's incredible, man.
That's cool.
I'm so excited. I'm so jazzed up. There's so many of them. And look at that 45-degree split right there in the rock. You know what causes this? It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it looks
mind-blowing.
Those look like 70-degree. I don't know, 70.
That's a sharp degree. That's a sharp degree.
Yeah, I think they call it acute. Like if you look at the 90-degree line, let's say you drew a 90-degree vertical line, that would be about 70, 75. I think it's about 70 degrees.
And look at these beings, these as my native people call, and I've been schooled. Unfortunately, I know we got so much more to cover, but I
Yeah,
want to talk about this.
good, good,
I've
good.
met with representatives of my tribe. I'm really in tune with my native people, the Abenaki or Abenaki, Anunnaki, Abenaki.
Hmm.
There's a reason they sound so similar because we were created by the same beings. And my ancient people, we have a creation story of a great spirit, a great being coming here. And when it fell dead, its arms and its legs became the oceans, it became the mountains, it became it don't matter where you come from, we all have the same amazing creation history. At what point are we just living on a fossilized, you know, terraformed version of some sort of living stardust entity? It really makes you wonder.
Yes, and the amalgamation of theories is between geology and terraforming does exist because um, geology talks about, and we see the evidence of fossil layers, right? So we have
Exactly.
just standard fossils where you see the dinosaurs, and then below that you see less advanced and less advanced all the way to the trilobites, and then below that the Precambrian really doesn't have many fossils, but because it's so long ago and life forms were not shelled and all these things. So we see the evidence of fossilization, and then we have what researchers today are calling the mud fossils, the giant humans and the giant dragonflies.
60 million years old. 60, like.
So yeah, so we have the standard geology text fossilization layers, and we have the organisms that we're digging out. Okay, so we're excavating those, great, and then we have the mud fossils. And so you say, well, how does that jive with terraforming? Because if we have fossilized layers, then that means that it is geological. It can't be built. So
Yeah.
the meeting point of the theories is totally fine. They work totally well together because the time scale allows for it. What is the time scale? It's a massive time scale, way beyond what the geologists are telling us the geological timeline is. So what we have is first we have the terraforming. First we have the terraforming theory, telling us that the evidence, the layers and the sectioning. So the evidence of the terraforming theory is shown to us when we open our eyes and look and get out of the geological hallucination, and then but we don't realize how old that is. It's so old that it much predates anything geological. How did things get fossilized on a continent that was built? Because there'd be no soil to fossilize them, and there'd be no minerals floating around. Well, time had to occur, great spans of time. The terraformed features of our planet slowly eroded, just like they are today, and the granular minerals would bring themselves. The rainwater would bring the minerals into little shallow depressions or deep depressions, and animals would get fossilized over time. The minerals would keep coming in, and it's all concrete. It's granular degradation, from the concrete continents. So then that allows for the fossilization we have. But the time scale, I mean, the amount of time that had to occur from the building of the continents to geological layers with fossils in them was massive, because it had to degrade, it had to decompose. So then you have the mud fossils, which are a mystery. But all that mineral material, I believe, must have come from the decomposed continents of the true ancients.
Exactly. Which I just want to point out what you just said. My Abenaki, in French, Abenaki, all right? My native tribe.
Right.
Creation story, which is a little different but very similar to many other ancient tribes that were long before the Bible was written, etc. It's important to point out the ancient tribes around the world, this is their philosophy. This is their belief that this is, a living organism, Gaia,
Hmm.
Mother Earth, Terra.
Well, that's another point, because we know that Tesla said that the crystals are living, as mentioned earlier. So then we have, no matter who built it or whether it was geological, if it's artificial or natural, it doesn't matter. Gaia or Terra is alive because minerals compose the earth, and so minerals are life forms, as Tesla told us. So it has its consciousness, and the building of the consciousness, if the terraforming theory is correct, then the building of the planet is the building of the consciousness, or the structuring of the consciousness.
Same structuring. It is.
And
Before we go on to more pictures, I've been to sites of my ancient structures. This alien head with antennas, this is found underwater, near a very sacred rock that I'm not even choosing to show the petroglyphs of, because it's very sacred to my people and I respect their privacy to
Right.
this ancient knowledge. But here's some others. These ancient stone, this is coming from Bellows Falls, Vermont, New England. This is my ancestors that I communicate with. And
Yeah.
I went to this site and I communicated with them. Oh, they told me exactly what these great ancient spirits are. These ant people, these dimensional beings.
Right.
They're there. And look, oh, you see that degree in that crack, bro. Now, here's the thing with this story, Jacques. With this site, there was literally thousands of these petroglyphs. The white man came over, decided, well, we're going to build a dam. And in doing so, we need to build bridges. So we're just going to explode rocks and bury all my ancient ancestors' things. You see how the rocks are covering the faces? Underneath of that, there's more of my people's petroglyphs, which unfortunately, anyone that don't have my ancestor memories, they won't know what's under those rocks. But I most certainly do. And as you can see there, me carved in there, and these rocks facing west. And they painted it with yellow highlighting so people could see it. I had to walk down the side of a cliff to get to this location. People have no idea how hard and how much bravery and soul consciousness it took to get to this site that you see me standing in.
Well, the ant people took the Hopi down before a great cataclysm and saved them. So we know that from what academia calls legend, but is actually just the story, the history that they carry on orally in the Hopi. The Hopi people have. So we have the ant people as our caretakers, right? And that's good. So they're a benevolent race. They're carved by the people on this basalt. It looks like basalt to me. Really, really, really hard stone or concrete that's next to the river. In other words, it's part of the riverbank. It's part of the construction.
Yep,
in my
exactly.
opinion. And so
riverbank. These were created on a riverbank.
Right.
The West River.
So you have ant people carved on what we can see now is what we can probably see if we had a chance to look at it. Well, yeah, there's a straight line seam on the right. You can see that.
Yeah.
So, that could be a crack, but it's like if we accept that it might be concrete, laid down as a part of a river course that the true ancients built, then we go, that's kind of cool that if the ant people are involved in the building, then they're later recognized and honored by the humans who somehow going into a dolmen and meditating and having some telepathy with other races, or however they did it. Maybe they were actually told by the ant people telepathically. They recognized that these were the builders of this river, maybe. So there's a connection, because that ants are great builders. That ants can lift massive weights. What I'm saying? Like, ants make these tunnels that are so beautiful, and those are tiny little ants like this. What could an ant that's 6 feet tall make?
Exactly. And what you mentioned in the same sites that you see these petroglyphs of my people. This one is underwater. You have to keep in mind, I was the fourth person in the world to see this petroglyph.
Hmm.
I've seen other things that I'm choosing not to share publicly because between my ancestors and I, it's meaningful to us, and I respect my ancestors and I respect my native culture, and I don't want the white man to come and destroy everything like they have through thousands of years. But what you see with these beings, what you're mentioning, what you're seeing right there, we built our burial mounds. That's where we buried our loved ones, are in these exact sites among these waterways, these rivers, which a lot of your research, even the picture you have behind you now, there's water there. There's a great connection to these megaliths that are created upon waterways, whether it's a waterways 2 million years ago, or it's a waterways now, or it dried up 30 years ago. It doesn't matter. And moving forward, Jacques, I want
Good.
to get into this because this will be a perfect segue into the Diablo Canyon,
Okay.
where these same kind of beings are drone, all around the world, from Aboriginal to South American to Mesopotamian, all over the world. So this one right here really fascinates me.
That's Horseshoe Bend. We were in Horseshoe Canyon before. This is Horseshoe Bend. Everybody takes the same picture when they go there. So you just have endless pictures of the same thing. But then this one person took a really, really clear photo so that you can actually see the many, many, many straight line seams through the middle structure, and then some on the left too. But you can see that the seams go the same direction. Now, how, if these are cracks, if these are joint fractures, as geology is telling us, then how in the name of fill in the blank are the cracks all going the same direction? That makes no sense.
It doesn't. It's freaking wild. Look at that. And I know a lot of people may not realize what they're looking at,
Well,
but understand the creation of it and the layers and the lines. It should all be the same thing. And the fact that each layer is completely different says something completely different.
well, they've been told by their geology professor that everything they see that's vertical through this sedimentary stuff, quote sedimentary, is a fracture. So they're like, oh, that's just some fractures. It just so happens to go in the same direction, and then they go get a Coke at the nearby stand, and that's it. They because the question is never allowed to be asked. This is what geological hallucination is that because we have been told that we're the first advanced race in the universe, that life is only on planet Earth, and that's on NASA's website today. Go find the NASA's official site and look for life on Earth or life in the universe, and you'll find that page, and it says life has been found only on our planet, but we're still looking. And it's like so glib and so ridiculous. You're not looking. You're a front for the secret space program, one, and two. The universe is teeming with advanced races, not just life of bacteria and plants and other animals, but technologically advanced races that make our technology look like flint.
Yeah, like a flint trying to start a fire. We're nothing. We know nothing. We know nothing.
And we're if we are called an advanced race, well, we're not that advanced, and clearly we have many eons before us to advance to the level of many of the races that exist. Perhaps they're sitting in our room right now, but they're able to cloak, and they're all throughout the universe. They're just running around doing their things that they do, just like we do. We have agendas. They have their agendas. So they're living their lives. They're not necessarily fully concerned with us, but occasionally they'll come. If we enter their plan for their life, well, we need to go to Earth for some reason. Okay, so I need to go to Terra for some reason, not Earth. we have all these races that can build planets, right? But because we've been gaslighted by academia, which is part of the thought control matrix, is one tentacle of it, we believe that because we're the only race to exist on the planet, in the universe, that because we did not build the continents or the planet, it must be natural. That's the geological hallucination. So we're not allowed to ask the question, is this natural? Is what I'm looking at on my hike today, is this natural or is it artificial? Because if we were allowed to ask that question, we would begin to gather evidence, and then we would come down on one side or the other. What I did was I was looking for geology. After I developed the theory, I said, I got to find some geology because it can't all be built. There's no way. It's too big. It's too large scale of a construction project for it all to be built. So I thought, I'm going to look for some geology. And I couldn't find any, because once you see the straight line seams, that's a strong, compelling line of evidence. And once you see the 45-degree angle construction of the riverbeds, which are foundations of hills, and the 45s keep going up the hills too. So it's not just the riverbeds. Then you go, maybe they did build it all. Then you get to the alternating hard and soft layers. Well, let's get to those two other photo folders that we have.
And how do you explain this, buddy? How do you explain this one here?
I mean, if we look at this, what are called arches, in the southwestern United States, this is in Utah, we see that the quote sedimentary layers are not horizontal. They're curving around the top of the arch just because nature did that. Wait, what?
Yeah. And
then there was erosion that happened to follow the curving sedimentary layers. It's such a fairy tale. It's such nonsense that if all we have to do is look. But can we look if we still have the veil of geology, which was given to us by academia? Because we've been told since our early schooling days, not just in the university, that all this must be natural. So can we remove the veil to actually look at it and ask some questions? Because most people are not, I don't think they're interested in that. They're there to have some fun. But if you could get them to be interested in not just having a fun hike for a second, could they actually see the curving quote sedimentary layers? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Would they care?
Quite remarkable. And then you have structures like this where you're talking about stone that's easily 20,000 pounds to 15,000 pounds. Our modern day cranes and operations are not able to place these rocks as they are. How does that happen?
Well, right. So what we have to come to the conclusion we must come to is that this is part of we look at the vertical line through the quote sedimentary material, but even if it's igneous material, we look at that vertical line, we look at these straight lines that consistently occur. And if it's igneous rock, there's no way you're going to have any straight lines, because it's molten. So we look at this material and we go, okay, that's concrete. So they just cast it in place, and they did it section by section, layer by layer, section by section. And they're not the same size building blocks. Well, they're not really building blocks. They're concrete sections that were joined by a magical technology, magical to us, probably sonic, but I don't think we could do this if the greatest engineers on the planet were asked to magically join concrete sections together with sound. It would take them a while to come up with that ability, I think, but that's what the evidence leads us to.
And then you have structures like this,
Yeah, we have beautiful slot canyons all across the earth, not just in the American Southwest. And these slot canyons are said to be, all geology has really is erosion, and it's water erosion is making these smooth. Okay. But you see, then you have the sharp angles of the intruding features along these slot canyons, and they're really, really sharp. And you're like, well, so nature's making it smooth and making it sharp by water erosion. That seems like a kind of a stretch of a term, So erosion is sort of like God for a geologist. God is all powerful, and erosion is all powerful because it can create literally any feature that you see, according to geology. Then we come to stuff like this in Bolivia and in Utah, and we see again, this is still that category of straight line seams, vertical seams going through either sedimentary or molten, igneous material. All this looks like sedimentary material. So how are these straight lines going through many different time periods according to geology? These are time periods, horizontal time periods, and yet we have these straight lines. Well, it's not doing that. These were built section by section. On the right in Bolivia, they built one section, let's say on the left side of that figure. Then they built the next one. Then they built the next one. They're layer cakes. They're little cakes.
Yeah. Layer cakes.
Why did they
love it?
We don't know why they built the continents. We don't know. Presumably, they were a benevolent race or races. The Akashic Records reader said it was built in stages. So many benevolent races are building this to make this a beautiful planet. Obviously, if you're an advanced race, beauty is going to be a criterion,
And there, as you mentioned, this is so valuable. There has been so many beings that have came here, added their 2 cents,
right,
built on top of pre-existing, terraformed, and we're only seeing what is the remnants of 50 other species at some point in time or throughout history,
right,
manipulating and terraforming and using their advanced technologies to create what we know as technology or Terra.
Right.
I love calling it the same thing,
Right. And I would suggest that all of these pyramids across the planet, all these pyramid complexes with the building blocks that they used, these were built by later races, the true ancients, as I call them, built the continents. Then the later races powdered the minerals in the locale they wanted to build the pyramid complex. And so the ancients who came after the true ancients, right, who built the pyramid, the ancients who built the pyramids powdered the continents, and they recast these blocks into concrete forms that would help them build these pyramids. So the idea that primitives are out there carving, hewing rock from quarries, natural rock from quarries, is totally nuts. That's not what happened. These are advanced structures. The pyramids are advanced structures. They're incredible machines. And Christopher Dunn was the guy who brought that up to our attention in his book's 20 years old, Giza Power Plant. So
great one.
They're machines. Thank you, Christopher Dunn. So this sophisticated races, not primitives, who are building these pyramids, and they would not have tried to cut blocks out of existing stone. What they did was they powdered the existing continents, which are artificial concrete already. Then they made their own artificial concrete block, and they might have mixed those powdered minerals with some other minerals they found over here. And they wanted their specific mineral recipes, just like in the Great Pyramid, you have a different kind of granite in the chambers. The King's Chamber, you have I think it's a rose-colored granite or something like that, different from the outer blocks. They were clearly cast. I mean, you can't say that these blocks that fit together were somehow carved and dragged by primitive people.
Impossible.
It's just ridiculous. And
with our modern day technology, it's impossible.
Right.
I should mention that.
Yeah.
It is possible, just not with our means of technology.
All right. Well, this is a spire.
Look at that.
You can see how high that structure is, and you say, well, it has to be natural because who's building that? What's that for? Well, maybe it's an antenna. Maybe it's transmitting information. Maybe it's using scalar energy to help it transmit information to other antennas across the earth that the true ancients built, or that the ancients built. And pyramid complexes also are antennas. They're
power grids. We call them power grids.
There you go. And thank you again, Christopher Dunn. Now, this has a weird looking straight line, but not perfectly right angle straight line, vertical line through it, and it comes out in basically the center at the top. And you're like, wait, how did geology do that? If this is molten, how is geology creating that straight line?
It doesn't make sense. There's no others around it. There should be a bunch of them, right?
Right. And there, if it's sedimentary, how is geology creating that straight line? Because sedimentary material goes horizontal. So let's say this is molten, it's probably granite or something. It might be basalt or anyway. So, but it doesn't matter what the geologists call it in thought-controlled academia. What matters is that this material has a perfectly straight friggin' line through it. And then when we see inside the sections at the top, we see the smooth-faced interior. There's no way that an igneous rock is making a straight line with then another straight line horizontally with a smooth-faced interior between sections.
No way.
No way.
No way. No way. So let's keep it rocking with these amazing.
We've been talking too much.
Whoa! What is this?
All right. So it's a little bit cut off at the top, but that's okay. You can see the roof sections. Most people don't take a picture of the roof. They take a picture of the dwellings from far away or whatever. But we have this person. I was looking for this for so long, and I finally found it a couple of weeks ago. You can see the straight lines through the roof. And you're like, but that's sedimentary material. How are they, those lines are moving up, and there's smooth-faced sections that the lines delineate. So how are those lines moving up through sedimentary material? It doesn't make it, they're straight. How is this happening, geologists? Please tell me.
And you can see that line in the top picture, how it's cut straight up through that, where they want everyone to focus on the dwellings, the structures that made are on the flat, but they so often completely miss the giant overlay, the covering, the roof, with a giant split going down it that shows that this is two separate materials that were formed together to create a roof.
And imagine the amount of knowledge you would have to make sections that join together and then arched over, let's say, I don't know how much distance that is, but let's say a football field.
Feet, yeah. At least
I mean, it's
100
crazy.
yards.
And somehow it's arching, and it's sectioned. It's not even one piece, and somehow it's
diagonal on an angle of 45. You gotta be kidding me.
It's pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah, like anything that large should just fall out of the air.
So whoever created this, the true ancients, I would suggest created this as part of the continental shaping. The advanced races who did this in stages do have a sense of beauty. They do have a sense of, let's create, I could imagine a contest between ancient races, true ancients, who said, I'm going to create my own artistic masterpiece over here. You do yours. Let's see who's is more beautiful. They're all going to be different.
That's a great well. I think this is a good segue. Jacob's well. What's going on with this one? Whoa.
The thought control matrix is always doing the same thing. So in academia, you'll learn about Jacob's well in Texas, and which I visited and did a long video on. And this is a screenshot from that video, I think. And so this is called a well. So if you dive down and you've got some oxygen tanks with you, you can go along a tunnel let's say the tunnel goes where the top of the photo is. If you just go that way, you're going along the tunnel, and then no one's found the end of it. So it's a tunnel, but it's called a well. They always name caves, cave systems. They use those words, cave system, well, to talk about tunnels, because they don't want you thinking about where the tunnels go.
Yeah, where does, that's my question. What was it that created something so deep that they don't even know where it comes out? Where does it go? What are the possibilities of where these things go? Where do they go?
Right. So
I don't know.
We haven't figured out where it goes because we don't have the ability with our tanks to get through those narrow crevices. So you can't carry enough oxygen on your back because you literally can't get through to the next place. So, but it's really, really long. What they've mapped is really long, so that's a tunnel. Now, you'll notice that caves all around the world are actually tunnels. If you just look at the graphics or the photos, you'll see that they're tunnels. They're not caves. There's a cave entrance, but it's really a tunnel entrance. And you could call it a cave at first, and then you go, oh, wait, there's a tunnel that goes for several miles. I'm going to call it a tunnel. You would, because you're sane. Academia says it's a cave.
Cave.
Mammoth Cave. Wait, what? It just goes forever. Mammoth Cave. So also they gate certain tunnels because they don't want you going in there. The plasma discharge that came and made the Grand Canyon went through the continents in a few seconds. Went through the continent in a few seconds, and you see this tunnel, and it's about the size for a giant, and it's peaked like this, and then it's straight down. It's called Stanton's Cave. They put a bat gate over it, which means the bats can go in and out to this cave, which is actually a massive tunnel, and we can't get in. And they're like, we're going to protect the bats. No, you want us to not go in because we'll see it's not a cave, that it's a tunnel, and it's totally built. It's built like this. There's no way that nature is making a peaked tunnel for a giant that's 25 feet tall in her sedimentary material. There's just no way it's happening. And when we see the tunnel and we see it's always peaked, and it just goes on and on and on. We don't know how long it goes. Okay, so although I talk about vertical seams through sedimentary and igneous material, people would say, oh, that means he's talking about right angle seams, but that's not what I'm talking about, because these seams that are pointed to by arrows are still vertical. They're just at let's say a 75-degree angle to the upright right angle. So we have those seams that geology will call cracks, and that climbers call cracks because that's how they get up these, because they can get their fingers into these seams even though they're integral and the sections are joined strongly. There's a little bit of room sometimes, or a lot of room, like we saw in that big open seam in the Southwest, where they can get their hands or their fists. So they climb up these, quote, cracks, which are actually seams or open seams.
Wow, amazing. Here's more of them.
Here's a sedimentary feature on the right. You know, everything's sedimentary in this photo, and she's facing a straight line that's transversing many different time periods according to geology. How is a straight line transversing time periods?
Yeah, how? And what? That's clearly not straight. That's a curvature. How? It doesn't make sense at all. Here's another one.
Here we go to Australia.
Whoa.
So this is a 5-continent slideshow, this little first folder. So here we are in Australia. We have a line on the right that's a vertical line that transverses every single layer that you see, and it's sedimentary, obviously. So how is that line so integral? How are those sections so strongly joined if it's a joint fracture? Well, it's clearly not fracturing apart. It's joined together like a seam in a garment.
Yeah. Otherwise, other parts of it should have fell at some point.
Yeah.
For it not to be all one. And look at the red in there. And just, the amount of years. The proof of how long this planet has been around is evident in that picture. Well, look at it. It's ancient.
If we look at this as sectioned layer cakes laid down by the ancients, we could say, and I often talk about this in my videos, that although geology professors will tell us that this is thousands and thousands and thousands of years of sedimentary layers, since we see the vertical line on the right, we know that it's not sedimentary because nature can't do that.
Yeah.
Nature can only crack, and if it's cracking, it's not making a straight line. It's going all zigzaggy ways. So we know this is concrete. Therefore, we know that the true ancients made a layer cake in the center of the photo. Then they went to the right, made another layer cake, and they did it with the same material. So you see the red line. If we agree that this is building and not natural sedimentary layers, then we'd say the ancients, who are extremely advanced to build planets and to terraform planets, must have had a reason to put iron oxide. Well, it's iron, and then when it becomes iron oxide when it's meeting the so then we have the same thing, straight line, vertical seam. That's sandstone.
Oh, it is the same thing. Look at that. like at that seam, the two structures of land and mass and the way the stones are completely different.
Well,
They don't match.
that's a point too, is that they do sometimes the material has a different coloration or a different texturing. So these layer cakes that they lay down are slightly different. So that's a good sign too. But just seeing the straight line through what is supposed to be time periods, that gives us the clue. Let's zip through the rest of these so that we can get to the other folders.
Yes, yes, yes. So one sentence, let's go.
Okay, so one sentence. How is that straight line formed in what must be either sedimentary material or igneous material? But let's say it's igneous. I wrote sedimentary on the meme, but let's say it's igneous. How is there a vertical straight line through igneous material? This is not a fracture. You can see it's not a fracture. It must be building, because nature cannot fracture its material and still have it hold together and still have it be a straight line.
Yeah, exactly. And another great, I just want to point this out. If anyone takes Google Maps on their phone and they look at the ocean, you will see these straight lines going through the ocean that don't make no sense in areas where there's no mountains, no quote unquote academia. Oh, the plates coming together and creating mountains. That doesn't exist. And you will find these straight lines that you can go from the Atlantic to the Pacific on these grid lines. Absolutely phenomenal. And that is a perfect example of that, but on land, not necessarily in water. Great. Here's another one.
Okay, this is the first folder of the first photo in the next folder, and so we have a few photos of diagonal construction. So this is in Texas. This is the Blanco River, and this line goes from one side of the river to the other. It's a 45-degree angle. Now let's look at some other photos of 45-degree angle construction in riverbeds. So this is the Sabinal River in Texas, 45-degree angle. How do we know? Because we see the meeting of the two 45s, and it gives us a box, like
a perfect square. Perfect rectangle.
Gives us a point pointing across the river, and those points are what I look for. And at the bottom of the photo, there's a point pointing back at us, because you see, so the 45s are creating this box, and the points are always across the river or straight back at you as you look across the river. So that's how we know 45. And this is the Foinica River looked at from Butsi Bridge, which is in the southern part of the complex in Bosnia, so the Bosnian Pyramid Complex. This is the main river that flows through the complex. There's a larger river called the Bosna River, and they both meet in Visoko. But you can see the 45-degree angle cross-hatching in this concretized material.
Blown away, man. That's so beautiful. Look at this. Look at that line. Wow.
Yeah, that's looking straight down a little creek right behind my house. If somebody wanted to visit me in my house, Robert, you could
really behind your house.
Behind my house, there's a little gully. It seems like it's not even barely a creek, but it's a little tiny creek, and it's hard to find it because the cypresses are all over. I doubt anyone's been in it for years or centuries. Why would they? So I walk through the cypresses, and I get to this little spot, and I notice the building. I made many videos of this particular creek. It's so obvious because in Texas, there's not much foliage because of the climate. So you just got a few cedar trees. So you can see the building. Now, this is a perfect bunch of 45-degree lines that show you that the direction of the creek, which is straight up, straight ahead on this photo, is shown. You could know the direction of the creek just by looking at those concrete sections that the ancients laid down, because those are going to be 45s, and so then you go 45 degrees, and that's with the direction of the creek.
And look at that. There's no way like a stone would just naturally snap and have a crack in it that straight and that perfect. That is clearly intelligent.
It's still there after all this time, however long that is, millions of years, we don't know. So that's
insane.
That's a landscape version of the photo we saw earlier, the Sabinal River in Texas. So you see more of the diagonal construction. You see there's another pointer on the left.
Right at the bottom too. perfect angle.
It's pretty crazy.
Like you can see the underground layering of it, how it's so squared, and over time, more water has stacked up on top of it. But at
Mhm.
some point throughout our ancient history, these things were intelligently carved out and terraformed. Apparently,
Well,
it
I think they just built it from the ground up, and they just built it out of diagonal sections because they knew that the 45-degree diagonal line as a foundation for the hills on either side of the Sabanal River would be the strongest construction. Because if they built with right angle lines, let's say the river's going this way, let's say they built it like this, that's not as strong as if they do this.
it would crumble and wash itself out and
Yeah,
not
it's
pertain
easier. I think it's
a
easier.
river flow.
I think it's easier for the river to take out those right angles, whereas if you have the 45s,
It
it's just
can't. It
it's
can't, and it stays.
it's like any construction that you see when they're making those really tall metal structures for cables. They always do diagonal construction.
Yeah, and even with towers, you see the cross beams.
Yeah,
They call them cross beams for a reason. You want to know what's in that cross? A 45-degree angle
yep,
flapping right there.
yep.
Dude, exactly. But they were doing this for our rivers, for our waterbed, and even in our ocean at one point.
Well, they've got the building of the planet is pretty clear when you see these long straight lines in the seabeds. Now, I don't understand that because the seabeds are supposed to be formed by
Yeah,
the volcanic seams of fire are pushing out the oceans, making them larger. Now it's supposed to be volcanic material, so I think those lines probably came later and were part of construction projects on that volcanic material. But I don't know. It's a
you
mystery.
bring up a great
Is
point.
that the continents have remained the same size throughout history? All right. The planet used to be smaller, so the expanding Earth theory is correct according to science. That's not you won't find that in academia. That's just some foo-foo that they don't accept. But the expanding Earth theory says that at the continental seams, because the ancients who built the planet put seams in their material, and they said, okay, those will be what we call the continents. At those seams, there was volcanoes creating new material. So what they did, the new material pushes the continents apart, all six, or other people say seven or whatever the number of continents you agree on. The volcanic action from inside the Earth is pushing these continents apart little by little by little, creating a larger ocean area. Then the water comes in, don't know where from, possibly from Tiamat, the giant watery planet that was destroyed by its own people, its own royal family. And that water rains for 40 days and 40 nights, and that becomes the ocean. Or it could have been water from some other source that forms our oceans. Then the Nibiru planet inhabitants come and salt the oceans. Alex Collier tells us that it took them 36 years to salt the ocean so they could control the populace, and that the populace had to be on the land with the fresh water. They couldn't go out into the ocean. So they salted them. It's an artificial salting of our beautiful freshwater oceans that the species had to either die from the salt or they had to adapt to it. So we have seabeds that are growing, oceans are growing slowly, slowly, slowly. The planet's expanding, new materials coming in from the sun, ionized particles, and that's James Maxlow, Maxlow. You can find his site.com, and he talks all about the seabeds and the expansion of the Earth, and it's all scientific. So he's written many books on this, and those books are banned from academia. So we have the expanding Earth, the greater gravity, which means we're going to get smaller over time to adapt to the gravity, to the larger gravity. Dinosaurs from 65 million years ago the larger ones could not have moved. Brontosaurus could not have gotten up in our gravity. So smaller organisms became the rule. Dragonflies went from big birds to little tiny insects. Everything shrank. And academia is telling us that this is because there used to be more oxygen in the distant past.
No, not true.
There might have
been
more oxygen, but that's not the reason. The reason is that the gravity, the electric force of gravity, is the electric universe contingency guys tell us. It's an electric force. all those dipoles are lining up, the subatomic particles are lining up, and they're forming the weak force of gravity. But on a larger planet, the weak force of gravity gets really, really strong with this new material coming in from the sun, and then the volcanoes spewing it out, pushing the seabeds out. So those lines that you see on Google Maps on the seabeds, those long vertical lines that are long straight lines that transverse maybe the entire ocean. So this is just a collage just to show on 3 continents of diagonal construction. South Africa is the upper right. That's the Elands River. I worked with Michael Tellinger for a month doing videos. And on my last day there, I went out on my own exploration above the Elands, and there's some videos on that. Just go to my site, Jock Doubleday, on YouTube, and check out the Artificial Riverbeds playlist. There's 43 videos. On the bottom right is a little creek called White Oak Creek. And you can see the diagonal construction of this incredibly large section that I'm standing on. It's 45 across the flow, and that's what they do. And here's Bosnia on the left on the bottom, and that's the Foinica River, 45 degree, which oddly I didn't notice a specific angle when I was there. It was only later when I started seeing it crop up in the 45 degree angle crop up in riverbeds in Texas. And I said, oh, that's just like the Foinica. And so I didn't even see the 45. I knew they were angled, but I didn't see the 45, the specific angle. I never would have thought anyone would need a specific angle, but that's what they used, you know. So that's White Oak Creek in Texas.
Beautiful, beautiful. Here's another one of the same photo. That degree of how they're slated. Then you take that with the actual riverbed. Why don't those pieces continue out over the riverbed, and why do they stop where they do, and why are they only where they are? So part of the mystery, right? It doesn't make sense.
Well, they're channeling, but the problem is that, like you, I have no idea why they're channeling the water.
Yeah, I don't have a clue. It's weird. It's so weird. Oh my goodness! Look at that.
So this is Iceland. This is Gullfoss. I think that's how you pronounce it. Waterfall. It's a twin waterfall, and they're both at 45s. Well, I think that in this photo, we can see that the building, like in the very foreground, that sort of rust-colored structure, that's just a hill, just like on the other side of the river. That's just a part of the structure of the river bank. That's I guess we'd call it a hill, except that Iceland is so flat there, but it's hard to say it's a hill. But anyway, so that 45 continues. It's not just that the 2 waterfalls are at 45s. It's just, but the riverbank on the other side is at a 45.
The actual bank is at a 45. At a point, you can see it on the waterfall. The actual waterfall itself is a 45, encased by a banking of 45.
Yeah,
it's a double 45. It's amazing.
It is. And so what I would say is that this was built exactly as we see it, with very minor erosion. The materials that the ancients used in the riverbed are much stronger than the river banks in general. So what I found in Africa was that they were using something like basalt in the riverbed itself, and then up on the banks, virtually immediately, it was much softer material. And that gets into ecological terraforming, which is a theory that I came up with when I kept seeing in Texas that the alternating hard and soft layers of the riverbanks were showing us that the ancients were interested in ecological terraforming, which is the slow, day by day, week by week, month by month degradation of the soft earthquake mitigating layers. And we're going to see these photos in just 2 seconds. Can you skip ahead to a couple photos, because we can see these softer layers. Oh, that's Gullfoss again, yeah, from a different angle. Here we go.
Right there.
So we can see the soft earthquake mitigating layers on the right of the photo. This is Bosnia again, right? Now, little by little, the water action takes out on these little thin layers on the right, the soft earthquake mitigating layers on the right. You can scoop that clay out with your hands, with your finger. You can
really, it's that soft.
It's so soft. You can stick your index finger in there, take some clay out, but it's so sticky that the water has a hard time eroding it. So you see very little erosion of these really thin layers, right? So what we have across the earth is a way for the ancients. Here's Texas. You can see the soft earthquake mitigating layers between those hard structural layers. There's chalky, softer layers that are the thin layers. So when the river comes through, it's dry right now, but when the rains come and the river comes through, it'll slowly erode, particle by particle, those soft earthquake mitigating layers that kept that creek bank there for so long.
Yeah.
So when those particles go downstream, what they do is that was gypsum in the photo before this in Texas.
Yeah.
That gypsum is extremely potent, a potent fertilizer for the crops. So what they did was they created a machine that was a machine that didn't need moving parts. It had rainwater, it had minerals, that were in the soft layers, and when the rains came, the soft layers fertilized the land, created soil first, and then potentized it, fertilized it with these beautiful minerals. So here in Bosnia, this is Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon. On the left, on the top left, on the full left of the photo, we have a soft mega layer that goes for meters, and some little sort of intermediately soft layers in that softer layer. But then we have this hard structural layer in the center on the right. So the hard structural layer keeps the soft stuff in place, and the soft stuff keeps the earthquakes from destroying the pyramid.
Wow, it's absolutely incredible. And look at those structures. That is intelligent. Look at those slabs. It's absolutely incredible.
So this
and
is
here's a couple.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, these are that one and this one here. Those are both Bosnia, and so those are baked clay stones, and the next one is baked clay stones too. So they're
massive.
They're just pure clay. And they leaned them into the structure just like the one photo before. You see it.
And then they calcify into stone, although they are a soft clay. After a certain amount of time, they harden, right?
Well, actually, I think what the ancients must have done is they built the pyramids in the hills by creating heat to make each stone, each individual stone. In other words, each stone you see is each concretized clay block, let's say, is different in size and shape than any other. So they created all these unique heated up blocks, super strong, super durable, and then put soft earthquake mitigating clay above them, below them, to the sides, and then so that every single stone was packed in. See how the stones have little tiny couple centimeters of soft earthquake mitigating clay between each stone?
Wow.
So it's all packed. It's all protected. So they create packed.
Wow.
So they knew what they were doing. All they had to do was make durable baked clay stones to alternate with the softer clay.
For example, not a quarry. No, sir.
Now Baalbek is it's a kind of a game changer because it seems to dip into the ancients, the pyramid building races, and to the true ancients, because it seems to be like it's terraforming, in the fact that it's sort of foundational. This is outside that building that we often see with the massive blocks. This is supposed to be a quarry for that building, but this is not a quarry. They didn't carve these out. This is concrete that was poured, and then you see the soft earthquake mitigating layer, vertical layer in this case, between these massive concrete blocks. They're not rock. They were poured as a foundational structure, but mysteriously they were angled away from the horizontal. So this is weird. But people keep talking about these huge blocks at the foundation of Baalbek. That's that structure that some people say is a landing port for spaceships or something. But whatever it's supposed to be, they say that those blocks were carved and transported. No, these blocks right here are part of a structure that's supposed to stay exactly where it is. That's not supposed to be transported anywhere. And the blocks that compose that massive rectangular landing port, as some people say, those were cast concrete. They're clearly not blocks of stone. They're concrete. It's all you have to do is look at them. But see, we're under the spell that they have to be rock that was carved from somewhere. Look how good their carving was. No, they just put it in place, my friend. And this is the last photo that we have in our folders. And I wanted to bring this up because there was an oak tree that fell. Oh, it's not the last photo. I thought it was. Anyway,
the last two. Yep.
Okay. So an oak tree fell on this this concrete that the ancients laid down. It's a hard structural layer, and below it is a soft structural layer that we don't see, but we're looking above. And so the oak tree hit this and cracked it. Now you almost never see a natural crack in the ancients' hard, durable concrete that they lay down as structural layers for riverbanks and hills and mountains. It's almost never naturally cracked because it's so strong. So the only way this got broken was because a big oak tree fell on it. Now we have the oak tree next to it, so I have the video. So it's on video. I knew that was important, but I want to go back to that real quick. That crack, you see how now geology always talks about cracks, but this is an actual crack. This crack is totally random in its line of travel through the material. There's no sense that there's a straight line anywhere in that crack, but they want to call straight lines through material cracks. They call them joint fractures, and fractures the same thing as a crack. So it's a joint crack. If you took a sledgehammer to our concrete, it would break apart in a random crack like this, a jagged crack. And if you take a sledgehammer or a tree to the ancients' concrete, it's going to give you a crack like this. But see, the point of this is that this zigzaggy crack has nothing to do, this zigzaggy fracture has nothing to do with what geology calls joint fractures through all the material you see throughout the continents.
Yeah, the perfectly straight. This is what happens when something hits, or for example, an earthquake hits and separates lines. This is the line that you will find from naturally occurring phenomena that tends to break concrete or rocks.
Right.
Now, going back to a lot of those straight line structures that you and I were looking at, you know, there's so much more going on with all of those. Like, look at those lines right there. That's a perfect example. That is not a natural tree falling onto that rock and splitting that rock like that. That's the point you're trying to make. It doesn't happen naturally. This is what it looks like when a tree hits it. The same as a sledgehammer hitting a chunk of concrete. When there's perfect lines going halfway around our world in 45-degree angles every which way you find it out of curiosity, and even some of these lines and these where they carve these ancient you see all these structures, that's not something hitting that wall there. That's not a sledgehammer. That's not a rock hitting the wall side. There's something that's causing these large straight lines. Look at it. It's so, once you notice these lines, it's almost like a car antenna. So many people drive past cars, right? So many people go past cars, and no one ever notices the antennas on the car. But the second you see one antenna on a moving car, you notice the antennas on all of them.
Right. The ancients who built the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, if you go back to that photo the very last photo, you can see that they took a clue from the true ancients, because the true ancients built their riverbeds with 45-degree angles. Well, this terrace of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon is also built with 45-degree angles to the face of the pyramid. You can see those lines, you know. So they're building with 45-degree construction. They're also inclining their layer into the structure. This was never meant to be seen. This terrace with beautiful textured stones on the top, flat on the bottom, each one unique, clay stones, were never meant to be seen by us. The only reason we can see this terrace of inclined baked clay stones, all of them set at a 45 to the structure, is because they were all that soft clay above, the soft earthquake mitigating clay layer, was dug out by volunteers who came and paid for their own way to work in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex for free and dig that out. That's why we can see that inclined layer. It's inclining into the face of the structure, because that means all the stone's weight is always leaning in. So if there's an earthquake and the Bosnian Pyramid, the moon goes like this, the stones just set in stronger. They just set in stronger. The earthquake mitigating soft layers are taking the kinetic energy of the earthquake, letting it move, right? Unlike our structures, which aren't allowed to move, they just brittly break, you know. And then the inclination of the structural layers between the soft earthquake mitigating layers, all those inclined layers just set in stronger. That's
exactly,
you know.
And I was just trying to find that one of exactly what you're saying and what they're right here. That's a perfect. That's the layers you're talking about of their knowledge of understanding these water beds and that some shape or another, like that is intelligently put there. They understood this and they were building these building blocks. And I've seen the videos where you're walking on the waterbed and you're like, although academia says this is just naturally forming, it's not. Nature forms within a certain golden ratio, if you want to call it.
Right.
These formings are using that 45-degree knowledge, which is something else, and how they're stacked. And for everyone that's watching this now, please check out the description. You will find Jock Doubleday's YouTube channel, additional research, website, etc., contact. Please go in there and check this out. I know that this subject can be a lot to handle if you don't have a background in geology and studying rock formations and water layerings, etc. But I promise you, if you just take the time to hear Jock from start to finish, to see what he has seen, to go to where he's been, and to see these ancient rock structures that are formed in ways that just don't happen naturally from volcanic activity spewing out. There's so much more to this phenomena, the creation of this planet, this living organism, that apparently has so many mysteries still yet to discover, right?
Well, exactly. I'm glad you brought up living organism. And I also want to bring up, as we end this, something that we touched on earlier, that I'm a playwright and a screenwriter. So I don't believe that I'm smarter than all the geologists. I don't believe that I'm smarter than all the people who think that the Earth has geology instead of building, natural geology instead of building. All I did was allow myself to ask a question, and which no one has ever done in the past. No geologist has ever gone on the land and asked this question: is what I'm looking at natural or artificial? Why did geologists never ask this question in the past? Why? Because we've been told that we're the first advanced race in the universe. That's insane. Unless you have a Big Bang theory to tell you that your universe is young, and then you're plausibly, maybe we are the first advanced race. So
that's like saying a baby has more knowledge and understanding than an adult. It doesn't work that way. We're nothing special.
Right. So knowing as we do through people like Robert, who bring the testimonials of insiders to light, knowing as we do that the universe is teeming with advanced races, right, who could theoretically, plausibly build a planet, build continents, then we can ask ourselves the question. That's all. That's all I think anyone should do. They shouldn't say, "Hey, the continental terraforming theory is right." Why not just go out on the land and ask yourself the question: Is what I'm looking at natural? Is the evidence in front of me telling us that this is natural or artificial? And then you make your own conclusions. You make your own videos. You say, this is geological. I think it's geological. And someone else says it's artificial. Great. It's not about Jock Doubleday. It's not about, Jock Doubleday theory. It's not my theory. It's just anybody's theory when you take off the veil of geology that was given to us by
academia.
Who is controlled by the Draco system.
Exactly. And in order to know the right answer, you must ask the right question.
The question that's never been asked. It's pretty simple.
And you and I, we're just asking questions. And you know what that makes us, Jock?
I don't know.
Extremely dangerous to those that seek control of this information.
Right.
Don't ask questions. Play along. And when we tell you something, you say yes and how many, not how and why.
Yeah.
And this is what's going on. And I encourage everyone, you should be asking questions about everything I've said in this interview. It's very long. I know this one has been through the roof, but I'm sorry it needs to be, because this is valuable to me. It's personal information. Many things that I've studied throughout the years, and just like Jacques, I've remained silent on. I've been to these ancient sites. I've seen these things, and the same questions that Jacques has came across, guess what? I've came across them as well. And I've been at these ancient sites and structures, understanding a university academic. I went to college. I wasted tons of my own money to learn the preconditioning that the deep state wants you to learn. I wasted my time and my knowledge and my sacrifice to learn all of that. And then when I actually went to these sites, not sitting in a university or college room, when I physically went to these sites, a part of my humanity couldn't help but be connected and to look beyond what I was seeing. And all Jacques and I, all we're doing, we're just asking questions. And it just so happens that these questions are something that really makes you wonder. That's it.
I'm asking questions. Now, they're questions somewhat in advance of the first questions you're asking, which is this natural or artificial? But what I've done is compiled the evidence from that question that keeps coming up artificial instead of natural, because I thought it was all geological, just like anybody else. And I compiled it in 2 books that I'm writing right now that are going to take years to publish, because it's going to take years to write them. So it's not really, I'm not really plugging the books. I'm just letting you know that the book's titles are questions, because the benevolence who created our planet, this beautiful living crystalline planet that we live on, Gaia or Terra, as you want to call it, that's one set of species that probably dominate the universe, the benevolent races who are so creative and loving that they would build planets for other races to live on, And then you've got darker forces that are opposed to that. So they both come up. When you talk about one, you have to talk about the other, because the war between them is a continuing war. And so we've gone into that with the genetic thing, with the reptilian brain, the intrusion of the reptilian into the good. It's always trying to invert. It's always trying to intrude into the generally good, positive frequency universe. So both are always tied together. So that's what we're going to find. And but I think if you take a hike today and you go out onto the land and ask that question, you're going to be pleasantly surprised at what you find. You're going to feel a surprise. And if you take a video camera, you can put your reaction on film for history.
Yeah. And that was such a beautiful way to end this all, you know, Jacques, you and I, we can sit here, say all the ancient stone structures, the settlements, the layerings, the degrees, etc. At the end of the day, go out in nature.
Mm.
Everything to know about the universe is found within all of us. If you want to know the truth, go out there, go to these sites, close your eyes, zoom in, then open your eyes and look at what you see and question every aspect of it. Your existence, the rock's existence, the tree's existence, the animals and insects' existence, and our existence. And as you do this, there is an irrefutable amount of evidence that says there has to be some sort of intelligent design. Who Jacques and I are saying are the ones creating this, there's no way for us to know, but we are exploring and we believe that it's many other different groups, individuals, beings, energies, frequencies, sounds, vibrations that all played a part in layering the existence of our creation. No different than the layering of bedrock and stone and earth and Terra and technology and all of these things, terraforming, that have been stacked, just like our planet. When it comes to this subject, there's many layers and it's stacked. And it's stacked in a way that will ensure everlasting existence to some point or another. It's a beautiful connection.
That's the key to the Fibonacci series. When you see a sunflower, you see the seeds in this spiral, right? That's because they're stacked. So it's a very simple mathematical foundation to this form, the spiral form. What they did, so the nature came up with a way to the simplest possible way to get as much seeds into one small space as possible is to stack them. And when you stack these seeds, they slowly, just by stacking them, they slowly form this spiraling shape. So nature's
the golden ratio. Please, everyone, hit that like button. Please subscribe, share. If you would like to learn more about Jacques and what he's doing, his YouTube channel, additional information, contact, please go into the description. You will find all of his information there. Tons of incredible research. I know this can be a lot for a lot of us to handle, and I know him and I, we've been talking for 3 hours plus and before, but there's a lot of valuable information. And the reason I'm going out of my way and that Jacques is going out of his way to study this, spend his own money, spend his own time to travel around the world and learn these things is because we've truly been infatuated with the things that we have seen. And we have questions that academia and mainstream science can't answer. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop asking questions because they can't answer it. That means we're going to research more.
Right.
We're going to look into even more and ask even more questions to understand, right? That's what it's all about. So, great pleasure. I definitely want to have you back on the show. And thank you so much for sharing some of the research and the knowledge and the sites you've seen and some of the structures and explaining to us natural geology versus intelligent manipulated design technology.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing journey. I think this is the longest episode of We Are the Disclosure we've ever had. So it's been a pleasure, Jacques. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on here and just sharing this incredible insight and rediscovery. Really appreciate it.
The journey out on the terrain was was wonderful. I think anybody can go out there and do exactly what I did, which is ask that question and come up with your own conclusions. So it's not about me. It's just about what you all will see out there. And I do love you, Robert. You're a beautiful person. You're a beautiful soul. And thank you for your entire body of work that you put out there from all these incredible people. Thank you.
I hope to see you all next time. Have a wonderful night. We're out. We are the Disclosure. Please hit that like button, and I will see you all afterwards.
Please join the YouTube membership for my channel. You will get exclusive badges, really awesome emojis, member-only live streams, posts, and chats and connections with me for only $5.99 a month. See you there. Hey everyone, check out the Order of Light merchandise store. We got a lot of different t-shirts there. The Humans Aren't Real, Lower Always Creek Incident. We got tank tops of Merkaba. We got stickers, glasses, a lot of different glasses, so get thirsty. We got bags. I live in New Jersey. We don't have bags anymore, so it's really nice. We got flip-flops, hoodies, and all the ladies out there, we got a bunch of awesome merchandise for you.